Hello, and welcome to this eSchool Media webcast. My name is Andrew Barber, and I'm a senior contributing editor here at eSchool Media, and I'll be acting as the moderator for today's presentation, which is sponsored by Zebra Technology. It's titled High Performance Wi-Fi for Today's Digital Education. Now, before I introduce our speakers, I want to take just a couple of minutes to highlight a few items about the console you're looking at today. The event, first of all, will be recorded, so you don't have to worry about taking notes or anything like that. In a couple of days, we'll send an email out to all of you containing a link to the recorded event, and you'll also be able to download a PDF of the presentation from that same email. And second, please ask questions. Don't feel as if you have to wait until the end. Anytime during the presentation, if you have a question, just type it into the Q&A box on your console and hit the submit button. I hope we'll have about 15 minutes or so at the end when our speakers can answer your questions. We also have a chat function, which can be launched via the brown group chat icon at the bottom of your screen. Use chat to talk among yourselves or to contact me or the eSchool Media team with any technical issues or other concerns that you may have. However, I do ask, please don't use the chat function to ask our panelists questions. They just aren't going to have time to monitor the chats while they are doing their presentations. So if you have a question for the panelists, please use the Q&A panel instead. And with that out of the way, let me formally introduce our speakers today. Alex Ender is the Network and Systems Administrator for Everett Academy, which is a private K-12 school in Clarkston, Michigan. And he also supports the networks of multiple other clients on a consulting basis. Alex is responsible for planning and implementing network and server upgrades at Everett. And Vincent Houston is Vice President for Information Technology at Jacksonville State University. Vincent currently serves on the board of directors for the Alabama Supercomputer Authority and on the core executive committee that leads initiatives promoting pre-K through 20 collaboration related to using new technologies in the classroom. And then moving on to our other speaker, Chris Keckler is Executive Director of Information and Accountability for the Kenosha Unified School District, which serves more than 22,000 students in 40 schools in Wisconsin. And in this role, Chris guides both the Office of Educational Accountability and the Information Services Department. And also with us from Kenosha is Angela Becker, the district's network manager. And she supports and maintains the network and wireless infrastructure for the entire district, including a 10 gigabit internal fiber ring, more than 950 access points, and 750 network switches. She also provides application and online testing support for the district. And joining us from ZebraTech is Sherry Martin, a senior consultant managing WLAN field enablement and business development for the wireless infrastructure division. She has led product management and go-to-market strategies for large companies and startups alike, including Apple Computer and Sun Microsystems. Welcome to all of you. It's a pleasure to have you here today. Sherry, why don't you get us started?
Well, great. Thank you so much, and thanks, everyone, for taking the time today to join us. In today's presentation, we're going to hear from three educational institutions, as you saw, that differ both in size and student demographic. Now, both of those variables drive very different needs with respect to connectivity when considering a wireless LAN network solution for campuses and districts. And even though the network deployment needs for each of those schools are very different, all three of these entities chose Zebra Technologies' wireless LAN architecture as their solution of choice. Zebra's wireless LAN portfolio is based on the Zebra's WING operating system. WING stands for Wireless Next Generation. The flexibility and scalability that WING offers in terms of different deployment topologies, from small groups of access points with no controller to very large network deployments across multiple sites, makes it very flexible. So, for instance, Everest School chose the Wing Express solution, which has a simple interface and is easy to deploy for coverage both inside and out. Kenosha's school district has an infrastructure that covers multiple schools and is managed by the Wing software that resides on a centralized server. And Jacksonville State University topology is managed by a campus controller that provides connectivity to the entire school, including the dorms. All those enterprise-grade features, the site survivability, and the zero-touch AP deployment characteristics of the Wing operating system are key points of Zebra's differentiation. It makes us, it stands out from the rest of the industry in that respect, and it provides measurable value for our education customers. So as you can see, each of these deployment scenarios are unique, which really showcases the incredible flexibility of Zebra's wireless LAN architecture to provide wireless the way you need it. And with that, I will thank you again for joining us today, and I will turn it back over to the moderator to introduce our first speaker.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Sherry. Well, we've heard that we're going to be looking at three very different deployments across very different educational institutions. And so to lead us off, I'm going to ask Alex Ender to talk about their experience at Everest, which is, in the private side of K-12 education. So, Alex, why don't you talk through your deployment and what your experience there at Everest? Sorry.
All right, thank you, Andrew. My name is Alex Ender. I am a IT consultant with LaPalm Computer Consulting out of Ann Arbor, Michigan, and a lot of my focus is on Everest Academy. I spend most of my time here, and I actually have an office here now. And just a little bit of background about the school itself. It's a private nonprofit Catholic school in Clarkston, Michigan. They serve students from pre-K through 12th grade. In the 3rd grade, boys and girls are separated to provide gender-specific education. It was opened in 1991 by Father Lorenzo Gomez with just 33 students in one building. Today, the student body is nearly 500, and it's split into 3 buildings on the front 40 acres of the 90-acre campus. In 2014, Everest was recognized in the Cardinal Newman Society's Catholic Education Honor Roll. And moving towards our wireless LAN challenges. In the past, we've had math books and different consumer-grade APs on campus. Recently, in the past few years, we've started to do some pilot programs with our middle school and our high school. In the middle school, we started using iPads and Apple TVs. We gave each teacher an iPad and an Apple TV and a projector in their room. This was our first kind of experience with newer technology. Previously, all the teachers had desktops in their rooms and very few had laptops. Previously, we had been utilizing consumer-grade access points. We had constant issues with these access points throughout the school. Additionally, if more than 2 teachers were trying to stream content from their iPads at the same time, the content would lag, and if there were any others connected to that same AP, their teaching experience would plummet. For example, if someone was streaming a video from YouTube or some other source, and one of the other teachers was going through remote desktop to show a PowerPoint presentation, that teacher trying to use PowerPoint would suffer from 5 to 10 second delays and maybe even get disconnected because of that other teacher who was streaming content. Another issue that would appear occasionally was the lack of a secure, isolated guest network. This required us to give visitors guest access and guest credentials to our network, which wasn't set up to really allow guest access, and it kind of allowed a little more access than it should have. So with that, we set out to set a group of requirements that we wanted to see in our new wireless LAN setup. We wanted something that supported the latest 802.11ac technology. We needed something that could not only support all of our current student and faculty technology, but also grow with us as the student body increases. And we needed reliable connectivity and access throughout the 40-acre campus, both inside and outside. In the past, managing each of the 20-plus APs that we had was a huge headache and time sink for us in the IT department. We wanted to ensure that whatever solution we chose would have the ability to be centrally managed and self-heal if something were to go wrong. And after exploring a lot of different solutions, we ended up coming to the conclusion that Zebra's Wing Express was the way to go. It covered all of our basic requirements and gave us a few extra features that we weren't really looking for, but now that we have them, I'm happy that we have them. Our solution is kind of unique in that we're actually using a virtualized VX9000E controller that we were able to install on one of our ESX hosts that we already had in production. From there, we installed an AP7502E in every high school and middle school classroom, and those are mounted directly to the wall and have a very small footprint. In the larger common areas, such as the gymnasiums and cafeteria, we utilize the larger AP7522E access points. A single one of these is able to provide a full-size gym, strong and consistent signal. Moving outdoors, we wanted to provide spectators access to the Wi-Fi while they were watching a game on the football field. With the AP6562E, we were able to cover the entire football field. From goalpost to goalpost, you can walk that whole field and have a consistent signal all the way across, which really impressed me, and I wasn't really expecting to have that much coverage out there. I apologize. The Wing Express web console is very easy to use, and viewing the status of all the APs can be done on a single screen, which was a great improvement over manually signing into each individual AP and managing it that way. Wing Express also allowed us to set up multiple wireless networks and have them on separate VLANs. This gave us the ability to have a real guest network for the first time. Additionally, we are able to apply both per client and aggregate rate limiting, which helps us ensure that the guest network will not cripple the production network speed. In terms of benefits for the school, the time spent supporting the wireless network has dropped dramatically. Faculty can provide a consistent and high-quality learning experience no matter where they are on campus. In the warmer months, we have teachers who like to take their classes outside to enjoy the weather. Previously, they weren't able to take any technology out with them because our wireless LAN wasn't able to push out that signal that far. Now, they have no problems going outside, taking all of their technology, and having class outside in the warm weather when it gets here. From a management side, having the ability to configure and troubleshoot through one centralized management console allows for faster deployment of new APs, less time wasted trying to locate and fix issues. This has allowed the IT department to focus on further upgrades, such as going to voice over IP and expanding the one-to-one program to additional grades. Currently, it's only with the senior class, but we're hoping to start pushing that towards the whole high school and then beyond that to the middle school. Having these additional features makes Everest an attractive option for new families and provides a positive outlook for current students and their parents. Throughout the deployment and setting up and configuring and everything, we actually learned a few things that we weren't expecting. The Wing Express solution has far exceeded anything that could have been accomplished with consumer-grade access points. And for those thinking about deploying a similar solution, I cannot stress enough how much taking the time to survey the buildings and talk to faculty impacted our deployment time. This ensured optimal coverage and a satisfied administration and faculty. We had a plan and stuck to it to get everything done in 4 days with very minimal downtime. Another feature that I highly recommend utilizing is the division of devices into unique sites, as well as labeling each AP in the Wing Express management console. We were able to divide our APs depending on which building they were in. So if they were in the boys building, we can organize all of those APs into one site. In the girls building, another site. In the international building, another site. Then we labeled each individual AP according to which room they were in, which classroom, or which larger common area, whether it be a gym or the cafeteria. This makes going through finding a device, seeing if it's having a problem, a lot easier because you're able to filter down to that site and then go through that whole list to find whichever APs are having problems or troubleshoot a specific AP where a teacher's reporting having a problem. And with that, I have a quote from our facilities director here at Everest. We were looking at a lot of different solutions, and when it came down to it, one of the contending solutions that we were looking at had a good price point, we thought, but we would have to put an AP out in the hall and support maybe 2 or 3 classrooms with a single AP. When we got the Zebra Wing Express quote, we were amazed. We were able to put an access point in every single classroom that needed it, and we had some extra room to put access points, put bigger access points into the gym, the outdoor access point. It really covered everything that we wanted to, and it came in right at our price point, and the features and everything just really impressed us. And going forward, I really see a good future with this product and a lot of expandability. And I thank you for your time, and with that, I'll pass it back to Andrew.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Alex. So, we've heard from someone who's deployed this in the private school K-12 environment. Now we're going to shift gears a little bit, and we're going to hear from Vincent Houston, who's in higher education at Jacksonville State University. So welcome again, Vincent. Thanks for joining us. Why don't you walk us through your experience at Jacksonville State?
Absolutely, Andrew. Thank you for the introduction. As mentioned before, I'm the Vice President here at Jacksonville State University, and obviously as the Chief Information Officer, wireless falls under our purview. Just to start real quickly to tell you a little about JSU, we are a regional university, state university with enrollment probably of about 8,300 graduate and undergraduate students. We provide campus housing as well, and the population of students we have living on campus is somewhere in the neighborhood of about 1,600 to 1,700 students. So obviously we're responsible for providing wireless internet access to our residence halls. We no longer have any Ethernet in our dorms. They are strictly 100% wireless. And obviously in today's current environment, students show up to campus with the expectation that they will have fast and reliable Wi-Fi access, just as they had at home in many instances. And also there's the dilemma from our standpoint that students show up to campus with multiple devices. So you really have to do your upfront planning and really be strategic to accommodate the multiple devices that students bring to campus. Now, in terms of really just talking about what led us to this point, there were really two factors that caused us to engage with Zebra. And one of the main factors, we started off with our reaffirmation for the school's accreditation. And as part of that reaffirmation process, we had to create a quality enhancement plan that's typically referred to as a QEP. That is now a requirement for reaffirmation with universities and colleges. So as part of that plan, what was developed here by our team was to initiate a one-to-one initiative for our incoming freshmen, which would be based on iPad utilization in the classrooms. And the plan was to do this for the next 5 cohorts, which would basically span over 5 years. So we were in a situation where we had wireless on campus, but it really wasn't ubiquitous. We strategically placed wireless, but we did not necessarily have wireless throughout all of the academic buildings and all of the classrooms because, quite frankly, although we had Ethernet access there, we didn't have wireless because really a lot of the faculty members weren't really utilizing those tools that had that requirement. But the implementation is one-to-one initiative mandated that, of course, we expand our network and then make it much more robust than what it had been. So that was one of the main driving forces. But also around this same time, we were in the process of having to locate a new wireless vendor because our prior vendor had basically decided to abandon the wireless space altogether. So we had actually just recently purchased wireless hardware, and were really caught off guard by their decision to abandon the wireless space. So that put us in a position where we had to go out and find a new wireless partner. But I guess the timing was good from the standpoint that we were about to make a much larger deployment anyway. With that said, those were basically two of the main driving forces. So as part of this process, we created a project team that was primarily, the project was managed by our director of telecommunications, since the wireless really falls under his purview. And what I did was I instructed him to create a rubric to really try to identify some key factors that we should give consideration to as we try to make a decision on, what would be the best wireless technology partner for us. So as part of that, we identified some key factors. And it's funny, actually, as I was listening to Alex's presentation, I see a lot of parallels in terms of some of the considerations we had to make and what we identified as some key benefits of going with Zebra. But one of the things that was important to our wireless staff, to our networking staff, was the manageability and reliability of the product, of the controller, of the access points, those type things in terms of, what type of GUI they had. What does this web interface look like? Is it user-friendly? Is it intuitive? And then, what type functionality it provides. And then looking at the APs, because from an IT standpoint, we're always kind of thinking disaster recovery because business continuity is such an integral part of what we have to give consideration to. So having APs that basically had intelligence built into them out on the perimeter and that they could actually carry on in the event that there was an outage at the controller, whatever, those type things. Those were factors that were important to them. And then as we were looking at the product, just realizing the low failure rates of the access points out there versus some other hardware that we looked at. It was much more in favor of going with Zebra. Some of the other factors we considered dealt with, okay, the actual deployment and implementation, because we don't have a huge IT staff, and you know, I think most IT people can attest to you can never have too many staff members. It's never enough, really. So we wanted to be strategic in how we progress with this deployment. So the auto provisioning part of what Zebra products offer was really a key factor, because it allowed us to get rid of this big staging room where we had to bring in all the IPs and configure them there at the staging level. Now we could just go ahead and set up the configuration on one of those, let it propagate to the different access points as you place them out there in the environment, and that allowed us to use some non-technical staff and student workers and those to really provide an additional resource to get these APs out there and active. And it really significantly narrowed our deployment time frame, and as I mentioned, you know, allowed us to get away from that whole big staging area approach. Other factors, as an administrator here and having to manage a budget with, you know, limited resources, cost is something that obviously was an important factor to me. And, you know, looking at Zebra and some of the other companies that were out there, you know, typically you would see some type of combination where maybe there was some good products out there or some other well-known brands, but typically there would be a huge cost associated with that. Or you may find other providers out there that maybe had a much lower cost, but the functionality, you know, really just was not there. So we really found that Zebra had a good combination of performance and cost versus some of those other alternatives, and we really felt that from a reputation standpoint and reliability standpoint, from what we were hearing in our due diligence, you know, that was a good direction to go in. And then also something that is also equally important to me as far as cost goes, but then also there is support. And Zebra provided a really good support model that we felt comfortable with. You know, we had an assigned representative, and you know, to kind of give you an actual real live example, during our initial deployment of our one-to-one iPad initiative, we had an outage on campus, and I mean, we racked our brains and we worked on this for days, and what we thought was something we could address, you know, in a day or two, turned into several days, and we were going back and forth with different vendors as far as our firewall and routers and just different things, and it was impacting the wireless. So although our team, we never really thought it was a fault of Zebra products, we still said, look, we can't leave any stone unturned. So although we couldn't really identify real hard evidence, I contacted Zebra, and not only did they gather a team internally and talk to us via conference and so forth, they actually flew in 3 people from 3 different parts of the country here on campus to assist us as we try to troubleshoot and identify that. And we ultimately found out it had absolutely nothing to do with Zebra. Although the problem that manifested itself, it was negatively impacting our wireless environment, it had absolutely nothing to do with Zebra. It was actually related to a firewall issue. But the fact that they still expended those resources to be here with us in that time of need, to me, that spoke volumes about the company from a customer service standpoint. So that's something that's very important in terms of not just saying it, but actually putting actions behind those words. And then also the fact of company stability, being that we had just left a situation where we had a wireless vendor just basically pull out of the marketplace almost overnight. We didn't want to be back in a situation where we were with really like a fly-by-night type company. We wanted somebody that was established, had a strong industry presence, that was willing to invest in R&D within the industry, and Zebra exemplified those things. And being a publicly traded company as well, we knew that there would be some transparency from a financial stability standpoint and those type things. So that put us in a comfort zone in terms of our consideration of Zebra. So those are ultimately the different things that really we took into consideration in making our determination to go with Zebra as our wireless partner. So with that said, Andrew, I'll turn it back over to you.
Well, thank you so much, Vincent. I really appreciate it. I was interested to hear that you saw some real parallels between your experience at Jacksonville State and what Alex experienced at Everest Academy. So I'm looking forward to hear what Chris Keckler and Angela Becker have to say about their own experiences at the Kenosha Unified School District. So Chris and Angela, I'm going to hand it over to you now. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. And welcome everybody to this nice presentation. Hopefully you're getting something out of it that demonstrates what the two previous presenters showed was implementation of a quality product, and it should be consistent with ours as well. Kenosha Unified is the third largest district in the state of Wisconsin. We're in the lower right corner of the state between Chicago and Milwaukee, almost geographically right in the middle. We're at about 22,200 plus students, give or take, any part of the day. We're at 40 separate campuses and a breakdown of the different types of schools there. As far as the demographic breakdowns, we pretty much have a full assortment. We're about 52% free and reduced, and we're probably either next year or the year after going to be a majority minority as far as ethnicity, but the full range of users and interactions that our instructional staff have with our students. What we have as far as our central office and then building level tech support to help you understand the structure we're working with is that we have the geographic sites of the district broken up into 4 regions, northwest, east, and south. And each region has a regional technology supervisor then that has about 4 or 5 building assigned technology specialists that are either dedicated to that building at the secondary level, or in the case of most of the elementaries, just because of the size and the number of devices, they usually are about 1 technician for every 2 elementary schools. So we feel it's a pretty good supportive environment. There are some schools that obviously would prefer increased support, but part of that's just their own perception and what their teachers should be taking on as far as what the technician's role would be. As far as our fiber overlay that was mentioned earlier, we have a 10 gig dark fiber institutionally owned and controlled site that we operate with. There's 5 core sites that operate in a ring topology. We have a dual 1 gig fiber connection to each of those remote sites, and then they connect to 2 separate core sites for redundancy. All this is then backed up. We've worked the last couple of years as the demands have increased and the technology has improved to utilize an off-site disaster recovery area that we're still looking to beef up a little bit, if you will, but it's with a dedicated 10 gig fiber connection. So, and in this regard, we're trying to address the needs of our users, not just the students or the staff, but also the organizational needs between the HR components and the finance components and all of the increased accountability measures.
Yeah, so we can discuss the different AP models that we have in our environment. We manage all of them through the VX9000, which is our VM central controller. We started by implementing the AP 7131s and then have branched off to the 8131s, the 6532s, and most recently the 7502s. I see them in the picture there. That's the one that we've been implementing now to kind of help with our capacity issues. And to give you a little background of our wireless history, prior to 2010, we had multiple vendor wireless environment. It was only in about 5 to 10% of our buildings, and we had them managed by individual controllers. And back in 2010, we went to RFP, in which we selected Motorola. We originally started with a pair of RFS 7000s, which were our controllers, and probably within the last year and a half, we upgraded to VMware, and we used our VX9000. The thing that's nice about that is it was scalable for our environment, so now we're able to support up to 5,000 access points. One of the things that's a benefit for us is we consider the management solution. We can manage everything through a single pane of glass. We've installed originally, when we had our RF survey done with Motorola, we installed about 756 access points in the district. And mainly we focused on coverage. So basically what we would do is we would have one access point in the hallway, and it would cover about 4 adjacent classrooms. We noticed, as time went on and our device count increased, we've installed another 219 access points over the last couple of years. And a lot of it was due to the increase in online assessments, which are done wirelessly in our district, and like I mentioned before, the increase in wireless devices. So what we started implementing was we had asked the technicians out in the buildings to survey their school to talk about their preferred testing schedules and environments so that we could try to accommodate the wireless testing environment for them. After working with other departments, we were able to finalize our assessment plans and start implementing our capacity outbreak there with our wireless network.
Similar to most states that have gone with the waiver for No Child Left Behind and then having to address some of the new accountability measures, Kenosha has had to implement some increased online testing assessment components at most of the grade levels. We've increased our interactions with Google and a variety of other web-based or intervention applications in the instructional sense or to support the back-end components of the organization. We have continued to increase overall our student devices so that ratio keeps going a little bit lower each time. Certainly not in a position to support a one-to-one environment. We do have some schools that have certain grade levels or programs at one-to-one, but we have quite a bit. We have quite a bit of technology that we're always looking to add. In realizing this, that we need to develop a optimal testing environment working with our vendors, the only non-state or federally required assessment, we're utilizing NWA and their MAP program for student assessments, and we do that 3 times a year consistently at grades 2 through 10. And so trying to minimize any trouble that the students might have or the teachers might have in establishing the assessment, we worked up the testing recommendations and then have these promoted and communicated out through the buildings just to ensure that there really is no chance or very minimal chance for any type of droppage or stoppage of any of the student tests. We certainly don't want them to have a poor testing environment that would impact their student achievement scores. You can see from the chart that probably similar to most of you, we've had to increase our bandwidth over the last several years and more of a, rather than a steady slope and an exponential growth. I can tell you right now that in the upcoming school year, 2016-17, we are hopeful to maybe even hit 6 gigs as a top-end speed. So really addressing the demands of the organization and the students and staff. A lot of this has been driven by our increase in mobile devices. You can see that in the last 4 years, it's more than quadrupled in that regard. Obviously, Chromebooks have played a large role in that, but we are pretty healthy right now on the iPad end, having probably over 8,200 iPads district-wide. The majority of those being the iPad version 2, but we still have some schools that utilize them, the newer models in the instructional sense.
One of our initiatives this year, at the beginning of the school year, was to pilot a school and to put an access point in every classroom. We really wanted to do this to see what kind of results we would get so we could encourage other buildings or, define whether or not this is something that we need to address district-wide. So we chose Jeffery Elementary, which is one of our smaller schools in the district. The student population and wireless device count are pretty equal. One of the things that we really liked about choosing this building is that most of the devices were dedicated to the classrooms. We didn't have a lot of mobile devices in there that traveled from room to room, so it was nice to know that each device was dedicated to that classroom. So originally, when we had implemented our coverage, here's where the access points were placed throughout the building. Like I mentioned before, we would place them basically in the hallways, and it would cover about 4 classrooms. But as the device count increased, we were noticing that the amount of devices connecting to each access point was exceeding, what we would like to see for any access point. So as we implemented our capacity, you can see that we added the access points to each of the classrooms, and we really focused on instructional classrooms. Just really for our pilot right now, we'll definitely address the other classrooms as needed, but we're focused right now on instructional, especially for the online assessment testing. What we noticed, this is a view from the VX9000, and what's really nice about this is it shows you statistically the number of devices and client count per access point. So if you can see the first 8 access points, or I think it's 9 access points there, those were from the original implementation just based off our coverage. And you can see the ones on the bottom half, those are the ones that we've implemented to take care of our capacity issues. And you see how it seems to be more of a balanced load, and the devices are jumping on appropriately to the classroom access points. So it's taking all of that pressure off of the original access points and applying it where needed. Some of the technical concerns that we ran into when we decided to move with coverage, versus capacity versus coverage, was the placement of the access points. We used the 7502s in the classroom, but we did not do anything with the 7131s. We left those in place. So we wanted to make sure that there wasn't any interference between those devices. So placement was key. One of the other things that we would do, because the devices were dedicated to the classrooms, is if we had some connectivity issues or noticed the devices were still trying to jump on the access point in the hallway, we would modify the radio setting on the AP itself, and we would lower that power of the radio, so we would ensure that that connectivity stays in the classroom access point and not, roam to any other signal that it can hear. We would prefer to only broadcast our SSID on the 5 gigahertz side, but because of the amount of devices that we have and a lot of legacy devices that we keep, we do have to utilize both radios. But one of the things that we found that was really beneficial in our environment was only to apply our student SSID to the classroom access points. This helped to ensure that those devices stayed on those APs, and we had staff and guests and, are jumping on our regular infrastructure. One of the things that, we kind of pride ourselves on is the importance of keeping a stable wireless infrastructure in Kenosha. We do have a staff and administration WLAN that's present in every building. So we can ensure that staff can move from building to building and stay on the same network without having to modify any of their wireless settings on their devices. We also feel that we've provided a confidence at the building level to be able to support initiatives, curriculum initiatives, and testing environments. We feel that staff, are comfortable implementing one-to-one in their classroom device deployments. But also with this capacity upgrade that we had at Jeffery Elementary, we noticed a definite improvement in our testing environments. Our speeds increased. There was we eliminated loss in connectivity. One of the complaints that we get from time to time is the login times on the Chromebooks. And we noticed a significant improvement with that when we added the classroom access points. Right now, what we use for our current monitoring with our wireless infrastructure, we do use the VX9000, which provides us live statistical information. It helps us to troubleshoot when there is an issue at that time. We're able to see MAC address, radio, who's authenticated, how they're authenticated, which does help in the troubleshooting. We are looking forward to soon piloting Insight. The thing that we're really excited about with this new program is the fact that you can see historical data. That's one of our biggest issues here in Kenosha, is a lot of times we won't get word that there was some sort of wireless issue until the next day. And so not having a tool to be able to go back in time, it's difficult. Insight hopefully will provide that for us, so we're really looking forward to that, including that in our environment. We've also really liked, since we've upgraded to the VX9000, deployment behind installing the access points has really streamlined. We're able to use the DHCP configuration option, which there's no more manual configurations on the access points. The other thing that's really helpful for us is with the 7502s, we do use the existing data jack that's present in the classroom, so there's no need for extra cabling.
As far as some of the common practices that we recommend, some of them have already been highlighted by the previous two presenters, but having a good quality communication between the administrators and instructional staff in relation to the technical expertise and background knowledge, providing them with the answers that they need and the options that they need to build the most efficient and effective educational environment is paramount in our setting. So we wanted to ensure that we always remain in good quality contact with whether it was building administrators or lead teachers or instructional coaches or even the classroom teachers on how they were looking to utilize the technology and in what capacity with the students. And then establishing the architecture that best fits those needs. And what's really been a big benefit to us is having that centralized management piece, which will now allow us to scale quite a bit. We do have a aggressive, hopeful goal that next year, not only in addition to the increased bandwidth, but we're looking to establish access points in all the instructional classrooms, which would add about another 1,100 or 1,200 access points district-wide.
Some of the things that we feel that Zebra offers to our environment, like I mentioned earlier, it's the simplicity behind deploying and configuring through that single pane of glass. We have one person in our district here that manages the RF domains and manages all of the access points. So it's very nice to be able to have that ease of implementation when it comes to at least one access point or an entire RF domain. We have a variety of access points too, and it seems that Zebra offers to us those different access points for different aspects for our infrastructure. We have some that support classrooms, some that support our auditoriums, which can support up to 1,000 concurrent connections. We've noticed that there's dependable uptime with this product, so we've really enjoyed working with Zebra.
Thanks.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Chris and Angela, for sharing your experiences there, and thank you also to Alex and Vincent for also talking about the deployments of ZebraTech on their particular institutions. Now, we have about a little over 12 minutes left in the hour, so we'll spend the remaining time on questions. And the first question, I'm going to go around to each of you to get your feedback on this, but I'm going to start with Chris and Angela. During your presentation, you talked about how there's just been an explosion in the number of devices at Kenosha from, I think you said, from 4,200 to 17,000. Now, what I'm interested in doing is finding out, as you plan ahead for 3 years down the road, what are you planning for in terms of scalability as you look down towards 2019? And how many simultaneously connected devices per student do you think you're going to be looking at that point? And how are you going to scale for that? So can we start with Chris and Angela on that?
Certainly, and it's a relevant question. In trying to identify where that growth is at, a lot of it has to do with classroom device usage, where you might have a team of teachers or a certain grade level that share a cow or a cart of laptops or Chromebooks, for example, and that's where some of the building leaders are making the decisions to add to those inventories and then expand that so it's less travel time or less hands on those devices, so the students get more comfort and more use out of them and more uptime with them. And so that's why we're concentrating our initial efforts on trying to expand access points in each of the instructional classrooms to broaden that coverage.
Yeah, and also to mention, we built out our VX9000 to be able to scale. So that was a huge advantage for us to be able to, right now we can't implement them, but down the road when we look toward implementing more access points and be able to support that higher device count, we already have the infrastructure in place when it comes to our controller to be able to support that.
Okay, terrific. Vincent, why don't we go over to you over at Jacksonville State, and what's your experience in terms of planning out for those 3 years, and how many devices you think you're going to be seeing?
Yes, I think with our projections, we are actually looking at a substantial increase driven by a variety of factors, one being our attempts as a university to significantly increase our enrollment. And obviously, the more students that we have enrolled, the more devices are on campus as a result, the more students we have living on housing, those things. And then also the whole concept of the Internet of Things, if you will, that factor, that theory continues to add more devices on our network, whereas in the past there were a lot of considerations we didn't have to make in terms of what type devices would be on the network. Then also in terms of just the different strategies that we're taking from a technology standpoint, where we are looking to put more mobile devices in faculty members' hands that they will use in their office, in the classroom, and then at home to deliver online courses. So we expect a significant increase in mobile devices, and thus we're planning to, even within this next fiscal period, add a substantial amount of access points in preparation of that. And then it's just an ongoing evaluation in terms of, what is really needed.
Okay, great. All right, and then just to round this out, Alex, do you have anything to add on your experience? Are you seeing something different from where you are in the private school?
No, I'm pretty much on par. As far as like an actual number of devices that we're planning for, we're kind of shooting for that 1 to 2 devices for students, just because of how everything is limited here on campus. Students aren't supposed to be using their cell phones during class and during school hours. So any devices that they are going to utilize are going to be provided by the school. It's going to either be a Chromebook, a laptop, an iPad, something along those lines. So in the future, we're kind of planning towards that 1 to 2 devices per student. As far as faculty members go, we're looking at expanding theirs to probably 2 or 3 per faculty member. And as the school grows, we like to reassess things every 2 to 3 years just to check in and see how things are looking. I can see 2 to 3 years from now possibly implementing more access points into some of the elementary classrooms with the use of iPads and other technology that might be coming into the school.
All right. Well, just I don't want to move on from there. Vincent, you talked about how there's with the Internet of Things coming and all devices coming online in great numbers from sort of consumer technology, but there's also another wave coming, which is the increased use of instructional materials in the classroom, which are technology related, reliant on wireless. So, can we talk a little bit about what applications you're seeing that are being utilized in the classroom, and how many clients per access point that need to use those applications are you planning for? So let's look more at the classroom side of things. Can we go back to Kenosha to start with that?
Sure. Usually we had a big explosion about a year and a half ago with Google Apps for Education. So with having over 22,000 students, each student has their own Gmail account. So we've been trying to, as we provide classroom access points, we notice there's roughly about 25 to 30 clients per AP, and that seems to be sufficient for them to be able to utilize and access their Google Drive, and for staff to be able to implement any sort of curriculum that they're using with Google as well.
Alex, what about you in the K-12 space?
Alex, as far as applications go, yeah. We are We have started to use Google Apps for Education as well. Currently, we're utilizing an on-site exchange for the actual accounts. So they're logging in with their own personal student accounts with their Everest Academy email addresses. As far as other applications, mainly what we're focusing on is supporting that good connection for Google Apps, Google Docs, and the actual streaming of educational materials, because we do, especially in the high school, have a lot of students using using external online classes. So they have to do a lot of different audio streaming for lectures, and they actually have to upload some audio files, especially for the language classes. So we're looking at that as a more immediate need. We are looking at upgrading our actual bandwidth fairly soon with the kind of push towards one-to-one here.
All right, thank you. And Vincent, I'm going to come to you with a different question, which is, as you have expanded your wireless capacity, and you talked about adding access points in the coming months and years, what is the security side of this? Can you talk a little bit about what you use to secure the network and protect students as well? Do you have protocols in place, and what are you doing there?
Well, we actually have two separate networks that we run in terms of how we isolate the wireless. It's isolated from our administrative network, so that keeps those users away from our data and those type things. So we don't allow wireless access to many of our administrative computing systems, to those type servers and those things. Is completely isolated. Now that being said, there's becoming more of a push to be able to access certain things wirelessly, and so far we've been able to hold that off. But as the pressure starts to mount and we realize that we have to begin allowing access to those things, then security is something obviously we'll have to take into consideration and do some things a little differently. Just from a authentication standpoint, we use a third-party software that we use to authenticate our students using directory services, and that we also allow guest users to access and create guest accounts using this software. But as far as security, again, the major way that we handle security now is really just by isolating those devices away from our administrative network, because ultimately that's what we're trying to protect at this point.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much. Let me turn to Alex again. There's another private school that has a question about essentially funding a wireless network and the kind of the infrastructure that you have put in place. Can you talk a little bit about funding and how Everest went about finding the funds to implement a wireless solution like this?
Yeah. We actually did a lot of funding through our gala auction. During that, we were able to raise quite a few funds specifically for technology upgrades. At the time, they weren't exactly sure what they wanted to put that money towards, and as it became more apparent, we allocated those funds more towards the wireless deployment. However, even though we made some money from the fundraisers, there was still a little bit that we needed to come up with, and we had a couple companies come out and do some surveys and kind of give us estimates on what it would cost. We ended up going with a company that we had worked with previously, and they actually were able to work with us and give us a a really, really reasonable payment plan. So coming back to funding, we were able to pay an upfront fee to get everything in place, and then we were able to negotiate with the actual supplier to get our costs down a little bit and to kind of spread it out over months.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for clarifying that and explaining it. Well, I'm afraid we have come to the end of our hour, and we still have an awful lot of questions that we did not reach. And for those people who asked a question that we did not answer, Zebra Tech will follow up with you to make sure you do get some answers to your questions. But that is all the time we have left today. So as we wrap up, I want to thank Sherry, Alex, Hinson, Chris, and Angela for really excellent presentations, extremely informative. And I also want to thank Zebra Tech for its support. And one final reminder before we ring off, we will be sending out an email to everyone who attended today when the recording of the webinar is ready. And from that same email, you will be able to download the slides as well. So thank you for joining us. Thank you all. And this concludes today's webcast. Goodbye.